Everyone, welcome to today's video. So today's video, we're going to be talking about basically something that the development team continues to do that, in my opinion, is eventually going to kill this game if they don't stop. Now, many of you know I'm a Division fan, but at the same time, I look at the problems, I look at the pain points of the game, and it's easy for me to just pinpoint them because you can go into the community and hear what people are saying. So for most of you, the PTS, was live and I did a few testings, but what I've decided to do is just go around and read comments for the past few days. And it's really interesting going through Discord servers, just reading conversations, going through comment sections. There is something that I've seen that's becoming, a trend. In my opinion, I think that, the developers' bait and switch mechanism of doing balance is getting old and tiresome. And I think eventually it's going to ride against their own, their own interests. Now, what do I mean by this bait and switch? So if you guys understand and know the way the Division game works, the development cycle of the game has seen the developers nerf and buff things that have never been a real problem in the game. And I know I've seen some comments saying status effects, it's a shooter, you should use your weapon. But you have to understand this is an RPG looter shooter. If you cannot get the fact the skills are going to be powerful in this game, you should drop it and go play Call of Duty. I'm not trying to be, condescending, but it seems like we want to get COD into this game. And that kind of COD mindset is why I think PvP is where it is, because COD has a very fast time to kill. PvP in the Division 2 has a fast time to kill. PvP in Division 1 has a slow time to kill, which then separates good players from bad players. That's the basis. That's why Division 1's PvP is adored by the PvP community. If anybody thinks I'm wrong about that statement, feel free to correct me in the comment section, but I am telling you from what PvP players have been saying about this game, that the big reason, because with Division 1 and Division 2's PvP, is the skill gap that was there in Division 1 versus just anybody can basically melt anybody in this game. But in the PvE side of things, you look at it, skills are very, very needed because you're not dealing with just players. You're dealing with enemy NPCs of different archetypes, some of them that run at you that don't necessarily can. They'll cause an explosion against you and your team and fire damage. They use turrets. They use all kinds of stuff. So it's good for the agents in PvE to be equipped against these enemy NPCs. But now they've taken, to nerfing and buffing certain things that basically were not really causing an issue because you guys know they had somewhat patched a lot of the status effects in PvP. This is supposed to bring the PvP to a place where the time to kill is much more slower or, longer, whatever it is you want to call it. I mean, you don't just take out somebody easily, but then they decided to go into PvE and then nerf it. And then at the same time, they did a whole bunch of weapon buffs and then did this huge buff to the Chameleon right now. And so in people's minds, I think they're hoping that they can say, okay, well, we got more buffs than we did nerfs. Thereby, I guess it kind of evens out. Well, here's why that philosophy and that thinking eventually, wears itself out. The Division is a game where multiple individuals can play with multiple different play styles, and they can play the game however they decide to, even though there's a limited amount of ways to play. Now, I know people have said, the Division 1 had more diversity than the Division 2. I doubt it. If I start, don't worry, I'll try to probably make a video on it for you guys so that you guys can basically see that there's nothing that we have in the Division 1 regarding build style or role that you can't replicate in the Division 2 without any problems. But if you think about this, players have designed their gear sets, designed their builds to be able to sit and do either good damage from cover or maybe in some cases run and gun, or in some cases to be able to tank. But then these different nerfs and buffs that that Massive puts in there makes it very distasteful after the amount of work that people have put in to be able to get their build where they want to get it to. Massive, what you're doing in these so-called nerfs and buffs, even though many people might say this is standard industry practice, is you're pushing your players away. There is no such thing as standard industry practice when your game is not a standard industry game. The Division 2 is a unique industry game, and so I think the developers should exercise that uniqueness and allow for its player base to enjoy the game to its fullest. In fact, bringing other things to a much more aligned place with, pre-existing and strong meta assets is a better way to go. So the M1A nerf at first didn't even make much sense, in my opinion. When they made that mistake nerf, they could have done all these other buffs that are about to be introduced in TU10, and that would have provided a wide variety of gameplay for a lot of people. Maybe they could have tuned the M1A a little bit and then provided all these others, and it would have made a lot of sense because, yes, the M1A was kind of scaling out of hand. But then every other thing now that we have that seems to be working on the PvE side is basically, using different kinds of skills. Status effect is a big one. Skill damage has also been snipped in many different ways by tuning different values and even taking away a weapon like the send-off. Now, imagine how much work it took to get the send-off from doing the classified assignments. It took a long time. Anybody who farmed that weapon will tell you that that weapon takes a while to get. I farmed it on 2 different accounts. For people who say, I'm not really mad at this game, I think for something I've just learned to, consider this as a video game. So I don't really get upset too much, but that doesn't mean that I don't see how much of a very weird decision that was. And then, yes, they gave a little buff for skill mods, but I don't think that buff really, in my opinion, negated the loss of all that damage that skill players could do after the work that they put in. Because the Division is a merits-based game. The problem is the developers continue to take away your achievements every time they do this. They may not be doing it inadvertently, or they may be doing it, purposefully. Who knows? Maybe they're like, oh, there's a build that's fun. Let's just destroy it. And then everybody's going to come back to it. Because if that is the truth, then it's a very sadistic way of doing the game. And trust me, for every 4 players that will say, you know what, I'm going to swap to another build, I think that there are 5 players that say, you know what, I'm done with this game. And I think this is the trend that if they continue, we're going to be seeing. So I know I've, shared my opinion about the status effect change. I think they're going to eventually, tweak it a little bit and put it in a middle ground. But I think they really need to be careful with the way they throw out these different types of things. Now, yes, the status effect nerf so far is on the PTS, but if you run around the Division community, if you go to the comment sections of different YouTubers, different Discord channels that are really active on this game, I'm not talking about Discord channels where nobody's talking anything. I'm talking Discord channels that continue to blow up my notifications. You will see that testing is going on, but the results of the testing is showing that status effect where it was actually, in my opinion, good. It was balanced and also enjoyable to use. And I've seen there's dissenting opinion within the community saying it made, legendary content cheese. Then I think at this point, if there are 2 people of that opinion, we need to meet in a middle ground of the numbers that they have. Now, I also have to say, if you look at another thing like the Chameleon was also super buffed, but I don't think that negates the effect of nerfing something like that because they're 2 different play styles. If you nerf the status effect builds, and then you buff all the weapon builds, people are going to run back to the one single meta that was in the game prior to this so-called patch that we have. There's a meme right now on Reddit with somebody bringing a box after the status effect player. The box says Old Faithful, and once you open the box, it's 15 reds. That's basically what's going to happen. So Massive is spiraling themselves downward into a situation that they were in before, a situation where there was basically no build diversity. So I don't know why they keep making these decisions, to be very honest. I think it's why I started a second YouTube channel, because focusing on a lot of the issues here can be really disheartening. So I kind of wanted to give myself a fresh perspective on something else. So I started covering other games. I've seen people tell me, yo, why you making these videos and all this stuff? You sound like there's nothing else to talk about and all that. And I'm like, yo, I can make content all day, every day. I have I have 2 YouTube channels that I'm working on, and I have other projects that I'm lining up for YouTube down the road. I'm just not doing all that stuff because I'm limited on time. But I've seen that these developers continue to do things like this. And even if they're dedicated players like me that may continue to, maybe just shift meta or just shift playstyle or probably not worry about it because it's a video game, I think on the long run, they continue to turn off a lot of their player base when I think they should be winning more players, to the community. I mean, what company would not want for players to be happy and then invite their friends to come in and actually start, and join them in playing the game? why would any development firm be happy with players getting agitated and leaving their game, and entire clans dropping the game? And why are they satisfied with it? Or is it that Massive, is it that you're satisfied with mediocrity? Is that what you're satisfied about? Because I think you guys have a very solid game. I know I like you guys, but truly, if you guys really want to, push the envelope, you need to push the envelope with your existing player base. This is my opinion on the matter. I think this is probably the last you hear about it. At the end of the day, it's a game, but at the end of the day, you also have to respect your players' time. And I've said this before. I've said this many, many times. Seems like we preach to these guys and they don't even hear anything, but I guess we'll keep talking about the different, scenarios, and hopefully somebody that, can call the shots will wake up and see that, a lot of what the player base is saying is on point regarding how they make their balance changes. I'll see y'all in the next video. Thank you for your time and audience. Peace.